So here we finally, our final event is peace with the world, the atmosphere being on our planetary home, of course closely interconnected to all of the different levels of peace. And we begin with Laureate Shirin Ebadi. Thank you.
این آخرین جلسه این سامیت و من میخواستم از حوصله شما که تمام جلسات رو آمدید سپاسگزاری کنم و همینطور از برگزار کنندگان این سامیت.
This is the last panel of the summit, so I want to thank all of you who have listened to us with tolerance, and I also want to thank the organizers of this summit.
سامیت خیلی خوبی بود. من شخصا خیلی استفاده کردم، چیزایی یاد گرفتم و به نظر من بهترین قسمت سامیت این بود که شما از جوانها استفاده کردید و چند تا جوان آمدن اینجا و عقایدشون رو گفتن و این برای من بسیار با ارزش بود.
I really enjoyed being in this summit. I learned a lot, and one thing that was very important for me was the fact that some young people were brought up to the stage. They talked and they gave us their opinions, and I'm very glad to have heard them.
و اما در مورد مسئله صلح در دنیا بایستی این مسئله رو بگم که ما همه روی کره زمین زندگی میکنیم. چطور میشه در این کره صلح باشه در حالتی که عده‌ای شاهد هستیم عده‌ای دارن اون رو از بین میبرن.
And now we are talking about peace in the planet, and I want to begin by saying that we all live in this planet, on this planet, but we witnessed some who are abusing or exploiting it. How can we witness that?
کشورهای صنعتی به سرعت دارن کره زمین رو نابود میکنن.
The industrial countries are obliterating the planet in a speedy manner.
اونها برای کشورهای غیر صنعتی و فقرا حتی دیگه در آینده اکسیژن باقی نمیذارن که اونا تنفس کنن.
Maybe in the future there's no oxygen for non-industrial countries or even the poor to breathe.
چند وقت پیش من یه خبری خوندم توی خیابون‌های توکیو که آلودگی هوا خیلی زیاده، ایستگاه‌های اکسیژن درست کردن که مردم میرن اونجا پول میدن و چند دقیقه اکسیژن تنفس میکنن.
A few weeks ago, I read in the news that in Tokyo, where there's a lot of pollution, there are oxygen stations where people go and pay for oxygen. They stand by the station and breathe into it for a little while.
و من همون موقع فکر کردم که خدا کنه این خبر رو سرمایه دارای دیگه نخونن، برای اینکه اونا هم یاد میگیرن که اکسیژن هوا رو توی شیشه بکنن و به ماها بفروشن.
And as soon as I read this, I was thinking to myself, I hope the capitalists in the world don't read about these news, because if they do so, they will be thinking of creating these stations and charging us for breathing.
و این باعث میشه که اکسیژنی که شما الان دارین مجانی تنفس میکنین مجبور شین براش پول بدین.
This means no more free oxygen anymore. We have to pay for it in the future.
همونطوری که برای آب دارین پول میدین.
The same as we're paying for water.
اولین کسی که این صنعت رو درست کرد بزرگترین خیانت رو به بشریت کرد.
The first person who came up with this idea was the worst betrayal to humanity.
و ماها که داریم با خرید این شیشه با خرید اینا رو میخریم، ما هم شریک در این گناه هستیم.
And by buying this water, I think that we are caught in it too.
در حالتی که شما راحت میتونید شیر آب رو باز بکنید و آب آشامیدنی بخرید، چرا ما باید شیشه بخریم؟
Whereas you can open the tap and drink off of it, why would we have to buy bottles?
که تازه خود شیشه هم برای محیط زیست خوب نیست.
And we know that the plastic, the bottle, is not good for the environment either.
این دو مثال راجع به اکسیژن و آب نشون میده که سرمایه‌دارا چطور از هر چیزی دارن سوء استفاده میکنن.
These two examples that I gave you regarding oxygen and water prove to us how the capitalists are exploiting us.
اونچه که خداوند به رایگان به همه داده، اینا دارن از ما میگیرن.
What God has given us for free, they're taking away from us.
اونچه که محیط زیست رو باعث میشه بیش از بیش صدمه بخوره، مصرف زیاده.
And one thing that hurts the environment more and more is consumption.
متاسفانه در آمریکا مصرف خیلی بالاست.
Unfortunately, in America, there's high consumption.
من از مهمان نوازی آمریکایی ها خیلی ممنون هستم، ولی کن اجازه بدین یه حقیقت رو به شما بگم.
I want to thank the hospitality of Americans, but I also want to talk to you about a reality.
من هر وقت توی آمریکا یک رستوران رفتم، انقدر غذاش گنده بوده که نتونستم تموم کنم.
Whenever I go to a restaurant in America, the plate is so huge I can never finish my food.
یعنی میزان سرو غذا در رستوران‌های آمریکا خیلی بیش از اروپا و بقیه کشورهاست.
This means the amount of food that's placed on a plate in America is much bigger than the ones in other countries like Europe or other parts of the world.
و این باعث میشه که یه مقداری از غذا رو دور بریزن.
This means wasting some of the food.
و هر چیزی که دور ریخته میشه به طبیعت صدمه میزنه.
And of course, anything that's trashed damages the environment.
UNDP یک گزارشی منتشر کرده بود که گفته بود با خوراک‌هایی که از رستوران‌های اروپا و ایالات متحده آمریکا به دور ریخته میشه گرسنگی رو در قاره آفریقا از بین برد.
The UNDP had issued a report where it said that with the excess food from American and European restaurants, we can feed all of Africa.
و واقعا ببینید ما چگونه محیط زیستمون رو خراب میکنیم و داریم یه عده‌ای رو از نعمت‌های خدا محروم میکنیم.
And see how we're damaging the environment and we're depriving some of all the privileges that exist.
معمولاً توی مدارس و بین جوانها و همه جا یک چیزی شایع هست و اون است که بایستی بیشتر خرید، برای اینکه خرید بیشتر باعث انتقال پول میشه و پول که به جریان میفته رشد اقتصادی بیشتر میشه.
I hear a lot that it's said that shopping is good. Shopping is good because money circulates, and when money circulates, the economy benefits.
و وام‌های متعددی که برای خونه ها دادن.
Also, all the loans that were given out to purchase homes.
همه چیز رو میشه با وام خرید.
You can purchase anything with a loan.
و وام دادن شخص رو تشویق میکنه که بیشتر از اون چه که احتیاج داره خرید بکنه.
And this encourages people to spend more or purchase more than they need.
گاهی اوقات کفشی رو میخرن قسطی که کفش خراب میشه ولی که هنوز دارن قسطش میدن.
Sometimes if you buy a pair of shoes on a card, on a credit card, you may end up paying for that shoe while it's worn out and thrown out.
این شیوه تفکر درست نیست.
This kind of mentality is not correct.
اولا یک مقدار از بحران‌های اقتصادی که الان درگیرش هستین ناشی از این طرز تفکره.
First of all, it creates economic crises, what we're facing today.
ما آیا دلیلی داره انقدر یک جوان لباس بخره که در کمدش رو با زور بتونه ببنده؟
Is there a reason for a young person to buy clothes so that they can't even close their closets?
آیا علتی داره که ما که جوانها فقط گوششون به تبلیغات تلویزیون و روزنامه ها باشه که ببینن چه چیزی مده و دنبال مارک برن؟
Or having our young people listen to commercials on television and radio to go after designer labels.
اینا تمام حقه های کارخانجات هست برای اینکه درآمدی بیشتر داشته باشن.
These are all tricks of the factories that want to make more money.
با مصرف کمتر هم میشه اقتصاد بهتری داشت و هم محیط زیست بهتری و همین که با مازاد پولش میشه کمک‌های به دیگران کمک کرد.
If we consume less, we can have a better economy, we can have a better environment, and we can also help others.
من در جلسات قبل گفتم که صلح پایدار بر دو اساس استواره: دموکراسی و عدالت اجتماعی.
When I spoke about peace, I said that there were two elements or bases for peace. One was democracy and the other was social justice.
ما در دنیایی زندگی میکنیم که بیش از 80% ثروت اون در دست 1% مردم جهانه.
We live in a world where over 80% of the wealth belongs to 1% of the population.
ما در دنیای زندگی میکنیم که بیش از 1 میلیارد گرسنه داره.
We live in a world that there exists over 1 billion hungry people.
بنابراین چطور انتظار داریم که این جهان عاری از تنش و جنگ باشه؟
So how can we expect our world to be free of tension and conflicts?
خواهش میکنم دفعه بعد که رفتید رستوران کمتر غذا سفارش بدید.
I want to ask you, when you go to a restaurant, order less food.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Laureate and Shirin Ebadi. And now we are very honored to have with us my colleague from Columbia University and head of the Earth Institute, and also central advisor to the UN for the Millennium Development Goals, and I think originator of them, Jeffrey Sachs. So your turn, Jeffrey. And Jeffrey has kindly consented to come. He, being that he's pursuing these objectives with the UN, he will have to leave early. It is no disrespect to the laureates or the conference, but he came under that condition, and we were so pleased to have him. We will certainly miss him, but we will excuse him after he speaks. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Bob, thank you. Thank you very much, and let me say what an honor it is to be part of this gathering and to thank all of you for your commitment to peace and to working towards achieving it in a world that is extremely unstable and obviously not achieving what we hope right now. I want to talk about a slightly different aspect of this problem, to just give a bit of a perspective and a challenge, but it builds on the remarks that we just heard. I think we have to appreciate the scale of our new realities. The world has entered a new era. There will be, as of next year, 7 billion people on the planet. This is 10 times more than at the start of the Industrial Revolution just 2 centuries ago. Humanity, for ages was roughly stable in total population. Then came the advent of modern technologies, the ability to mobilize vast amounts of energy, first from the steam engine, then in internal combustion engines, which got most of us here, by automobiles, then understanding the dynamics of electricity, and of course the world changed fundamentally. One of the things that was made possible by that was a almost unimaginable increase in the capacity to produce food on the planet and to support a growing population. And the world's population began to take off in the middle of the 18th century, and it is only now beginning to slow in its growth, but to slow from a vast, vast base. So we're still increasing the population by 75 to 80 million people per year. That means that when the UN tried to turn the clock forward for the rest of the century, of course, with big guesses about how people will choose to marry, how many children, what the fertility will be, all very uncertain, as you can imagine, we could reach more than 10 billion people by the end of the century. Now, the second thing that makes our age unique, both for the good and for the bad, is that the technologies that once made one small corner of the world, the US and Europe and Japan, to be the high-income world and all of the rest to be the poorer world, the knowledge of those technologies, which empowered the modern world. And I think not all to the bad, I must say, because we've now reached a life expectancy of 80 years, and I think this is one of the great triumphs of knowledge and great triumphs of technology, and one of the most important gains that humanity has made for itself in our history as a species. But that technology, for good and for bad, has now reached virtually all parts of the world. This is changing the dynamics of the world decisively, because countries that were far behind in economic productivity just 20 or 30 years ago are now achieving an unprecedented increase of productivity, of output, of use of resources, a rise of living standards in many cases, and a fall of poverty, but still a planetary imbalance that is unprecedented. And of course, as all of you know, China is the true exemplar of that. 1.3 billion people, more than 20% of the world's population, has been achieving economic growth at the previously unheard of rate of 10% per year for 31 years now. Now, from one point of view, and some of you may have had the chance to visit China, others to read or see about China. China was an impoverished country. People suffered from their poverty, and now it is a middle-income economy, and poverty has been largely eliminated. This is true progress of human well-being, in my opinion. But now China exceeds the United States, for example, in its use of energy and contribution to greenhouse gases, which are causing climate change. And when you take into account that India, with 1.2 billion people, is also unlocked its access to high technology. Brazil has become a major scientific power and a major technological powerhouse. And even Africa, which is the region of the world most trapped in extreme poverty, is beginning to benefit from the spread of technology. For example, mobile phones in every village I visit in Africa now. And I'm visiting the poorest places in the world, and there are the cell phones. And by the way, that's no small thing. That is saving lives, changing lives, breaking isolation, making possible some absolutely wonderful advances. It's not just the ability to make a phone call, it's the ability to stay alive, to find somebody who's lost, to call an ambulance, to make a business, to get grain to the market, to do many, many things which are life-saving and life-changing. But even there, the technology now flows. So ladies and gentlemen, the distinctive part of our age is that we are completely interconnected. Technology is flowing to every nook and cranny of a 7 billion person world. And as the poorer countries catch up with the richer countries, what was already an imbalance in our use and relationship with nature has become a frightening runaway risk to the whole planet. To say to the developing countries, don't do that, you can't catch up, is of course immoral and anyway impossible. That's not anybody's choice, much less the less than 5% of the world that we in the United States represent. So now the world is barreling ahead. And the main point that I want to make in just the few minutes that I'm speaking is that we need to rethink how we live on the crowded planet. Our decisions will make a difference, but most important, our ability to live at a planetary scale, in contact, cross-culture, understanding, with a empathy and a mutual perspective that extends around the world will be the life or death for us in this century. And as you just heard, and as you know very well, living together on this crowded planet is going to require several fundamental changes of how we live today. First, we can't, and the rich can't imagine that they can live with the impunity that they now have and that they now feel. And I must say that the arrest of the IMF director is a special kind of feeling of impunity, a sense of recklessness of someone who is too used to power from everything that we can see. But the planet is too crowded for these divisions between rich and poor. It's impossible for us to go on this way. And what we have in the United States is, unfortunately, two political parties that are bought and owned by the rich. And we're going to need a political movement in this country that is just based on decent people not needing to be bought out or to sell out because we have the votes. They don't have the votes. They just have the money. The votes are better than the money, by the way. So we need a new approach. Second, we need a new approach, of course, to technology itself. I am not anti-technology, quite the contrary. I work in the poorest places in the world that have no access to modern technology, and I see children die before my eyes. We don't want a world that doesn't make use of the wisdom that we've learned. At least I don't. We need technology, knowledge, advanced science if we're going to be able to live peacefully in the 21st century. You can't feed a planet of 7 billion people with rudimentary methods. It's impossible. So we actually need to live together with our technologies, but change the technologies so that they are sustainable. This is a massive effort, both of the head, the science, the technology, and the heart. We need to put the two together, but it's not a matter of rejecting the modern world. Without a modern world, we may be able to sustain 700 million people on the planet. But if we're going to sustain 7 billion people on the planet, we're going to need some pretty clear thinking, and we're going to have to mobilize technology. And believe me, if you want to know what it's like, go live in a place without electricity. Try to stay alive and keep your eyes shut from the children dying before your eyes. We need the technology, but we need a new form of sustainable and renewable technology. Fortunately, a lot is possible, but we have to be far more consequent towards it. And of course, I think it's obvious, and final point, from time immemorial, our morality has been focused, of course, a lot on our immediate surroundings because that was the scope of our effects in the world. And maybe we could talk about our communities, our villages, our neighbors, what we should and could do to our neighbors and what we would have them do to us. We are the first generation, by virtue of this crowded and technologically advanced world, that absolutely holds the survival of the world in our choices in terms of future generations. We need to think anew about stewardship. We are fundamentally stewards for our children and our children's children and the generations ahead. This is a concept that doesn't even exist in our political discourse in the United States. When's the last time you heard our politicians talk about anything with the time span beyond the next election? They are completely without the moral vocabulary to do it. So I think, and I'll stop here, that the gatherings like this are crucial. It is the creation of a new understanding and a network which I think needs to reach around the world and use the tools that we have to make that reach. Get on Skype, get on your Facebook, make contacts with the Egyptian student heroes who brought down a dictator, make contacts with the young people around the world, connect our children with the children in schools around the world. Let's build the kind of global society meant for decency, for compassion, and for survival. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Bravo. Thank you, yes, sir. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you.